hearing you saying that, observing that the Holocaust started off with these euthanasia camps. I'm kind of reassured that the comments reported at the weekend about euthanasia booths were a kind of satire about sort of attitudes to ageing. Were you surprised at how that's been kind of taken seriously as a proposal almost?
No, I mean it quite seriously. It's utopian, of course. It'll never happen, or not for a very long time. No, I'm a fan of euthanasia. And don't forget, I'm not too far off that myself. And I do think it's existentially far more terrifying. I mean, the idea of someone helping me on my way as I'm screaming my way through the last 3 months with a shot of morphine is nothing like as frightening as the idea that you can't get out. And, when you're, say, 70, you don't feel like walking under a bus. There's got to be something easier than that. So I'm quite serious about that, and also what hasn't. And I do think it's a remnant, a vestige of Christian belief. I mean, there's a whole book about how shot through the American Constitution is with religious belief. You wouldn't believe how much of it is conditioned by religion. And I think there's a bit of that. But we're now in an emergency that my generation, the generation less and less affectionately known as the baby boomers, the baby boom generation, is going to be a curse on society of a magnitude that demographers say is quite new. No demographic distortion will ever approach what we're now about to have. And I've read, the trouble with those quotes in the paper was that they're taken from my novel that's about to come out, and they're novelistic, satirical. But it's absolutely true, and it's quoted in the book that a serious economist saying, for at least a generation, the business of government will be transferring money from the young to the old. The young have one child. We come from a generation of 2 or 3 children. They're all getting old at the same time. This is known as, in America, as the third rail issue that no politician can mention, because it's like stepping on the live rail in a subway station. You're instantly electrocuted. It's such a huge distortion of demography is about to descend on us. They call it, it's not my phrase, the silver tsunami. Nothing like it in history. And hideous oldsters like me, very soon, are going to be stinking up the clinics and the restaurants, and there will be an extremely resentful younger generation. I can understand why. And I imagine a sort of civil war, with chronological cleansing. In my happier fantasies, I see myself as a warrior in this war, in a wheelchair with a GPS system, doing great damage to the young. But actually, temperamentally, I feel I would be, when it gets rough, I would love a little booth, with a martini and a medal, and the lethal injection. I don't see any point in sticking around for a minute longer once your mind is gone. I think it's pitiful, and without to be human is to have a certain amount of dignity, and I don't see that dignity in the demented. They don't see it either. I mean, Iris Murdoch and Saul Bellow are the 2 people I know who succumbed to Alzheimer's. And as John Bailey, Iris Murdoch's husband, says in one of his 3 books on this subject, that there's a terrible shift happens once the disease has really taken hold. I don't know if you've seen that film, Iris, which I found absolutely sort of shattering. I mean, there are these moments as it approaches where she's saying, what's that word for... And he says brightly, well, all words are a bit like that when you take them by surprise, aren't they? And Judi Dench, marvelous performance, just sort of looks away, and you see terrible fear in her face. But then, 3 months later, she's watching Teletubbies, and it's a good day. There she is, happily in front of Teletubbies, not in nameless, unreasoning terror of she doesn't know what. And he says what happens is that the disease, as it progresses, cancels the awareness of loss. So you don't know anymore what you once were and what you could do with your mind. And there are many ways in which a life can slip into the negative. And the mild negative, perhaps you would endure the acute negative. I don't think anyone should be asked to do. I think it's unworthy of a human being to have to go through that. I mean, just to separate it from the Nazi program, there was no choice there. There was not even, and it wasn't the old. It wasn't the old. It was anyone with any deformity or disability, the blind, the deaf, the misshapen, as well as malingerers and grumblers. Once it got really going, Lifton calls the period after it got going wild euthanasia. The doctors take over, where it was just anyone at all who wasn't a strapping Aryan. And they didn't have any choice about it.
I think the subtext of what you're trying to say, you're trying to give a gross misrepresentations of the young ones. And I would like to assure all our old ones, our senior citizens, that we are not all that morally monstrous as to start orchestrating civil war against you in the next 10 to 15 years. The thing is just that history has a way of surprising doomsayers. For instance, look at Reverend Malthus, who said, some 300 years ago then, that the rate of population growth is less than the rate of food production, that something has to be done if we don't want to have serious famine. And look at what the Industrial Revolution did to the production of food. So there's a way history or life is going to surprise us. I don't think we are morally monstrous as to do that. Then the other thing is just that you're trying to separate this issue of perspective of Auschwitz from the comment you just made about the old people. I don't think they are separate. They are the same thing, because you're saying that in Auschwitz they didn't have any choice. You understand that in this case it's a choice action. I don't see them as separate. They belong to the same moral monstrosities. During the Auschwitz, they defined all those they eventually killed as defective, which is the same thing you are talking about as regards old people.
No. When they were doing euthanasia, they said that life unworthy of life, unworthy mouths. In Auschwitz, they were Jewish. That was all that was wrong with them. Or they were gypsies, or they were homosexuals, and the other categories. I think it's quite simple. This point was made by Ian Wilson in The Independent. He said, those who believe in the sacred nature of human life and believe in the Christian doctrine that life is a gift from God and not ours to dispose of. He said those people should ask for and be issued with the equivalent of kidney donor cards, so that in whatever kind of mess they get into physically and mentally, they will have the privilege of screaming their way through the last few months, and no one will be allowed to lay a finger on them because for religious reasons they want to live until the last drop of breath is suctioned out of them. Well, they can do that. I don't pretend that it's going to be easy to administer, and that there's going to be a lot of invigilation needed. But I think that the choice to die is a noble and dignified human privilege that we should all have.